All right. Welcome. This is our second Oso Archery podcast, and we got Derek here today. And we're going to be going over a whole bunch of different topics, rabbit holes, but we're going to mostly be talking about conservation. And let's really just get into it.
I appreciate you coming over.
Yeah, thanks for coming over.
Definitely. First podcast for me, so bear with me.
That's right. Second podcast for us, so bear with us as well.
Yep.
Right, so this is going to work out just fine.
Yes, it will.
So what's your background?
So hunting background, I was born and raised into a family that didn't hunt, actually.
Really?
And I got exposed to it when I was, say, about 13 or 14. One of my good friends, a couple years older than I am, was into bird hunting. And he invited me out and said, hey, let's go walk out and do some duck hunting. I'm like, all right, okay.
Sounds fun.
So never really shot any rifles or any shotguns or anything. And, I walked out. We did, our first hunt was between Marysville and Everett, a place we called Viking Steel, an old steel mill out there in Marysville.
I think I might know where that's at. I feel like I've gone out there with my dad before.
Very south into town. And it was very...
Is that right on the slough?
Right on the slough.
Right on the
Yeah,
slough.
I've been out there. I've been out there before.
Burnt down not too long ago.
It's all industrialized now.
Yeah.
It's growing up. But back then, it was just this one yellow, big metal building and a parking lot. And you parked there, you went across the irrigation ditch and out across the fields and out over towards the sloughs. And that's what
I'm like 100% sure I've been out there with my dad before hunting geese.
It's public on the backside of it.
Yeah.
Is it still public now?
It's still public now. It's
Is there any access there?
very little.
See, that's
Very little. It's all boat now
Yeah.
because they took and they flooded it all out, and it's tidal now, so you can get in there with sneak boats and everything else. But we'll get into some access issues with hunting. But that's where I got my start. Matter of fact, I had got out there with my buddy. We were hunting some ducks, and he had his shotgun, and I was just kind of basically tagging along. And he said, have you ever shot a shotgun before? I said, no, I haven't shot a shotgun before.
How do you use this thing?
So,
Did you need to have a hunting license back then?
not to go with. I wasn't really actively hunting, but
Okay.
I was just basically
Tagging along.
tagging along, hanging out.
Nice little
Okay.
tag along.
And so he had a Marlin Super Goose bolt action 10 gauge. And
A
he said, "You should
bolt
shoot this."
action?
Bolt action.
Whoa,
He said,
okay.
hey, you
That's
should
good.
shoot this. I said, oh, okay. I said, what's it feel like? He goes, oh, it just feels like a little 22. So he grabs up to my shoulder, pushes on my shoulder. He goes, oh, it just kicks that much.
And this is the first time you ever shot a gun?
First time I ever shot a shotgun or a rifle or anything.
Okay.
And a 10 gauge.
And I thought, okay. And that thing was long and heavy, and I lifted that thing up, and I could just barely see it. And I pointed out towards a little dirt mound, and next thing I know, it flashed, and my buddy was holding on to me, and man, that was an eye-opening experience.
I bet.
So I was probably blue on this side, and black on the back side. Probably the reason why I got shoulder issues today.
Geesh.
But that was it for me. I fell in love with it. I thought, wow, this is cool. And so it wasn't until 96, 95. So it was a few years later, I thought, I'm going to get my own shotgun. I'm going to get my license. I'm going to start
Really get into it.
Really get into it. Obviously, we've, fished a lot, and that was our thing. It was easier access to fish.
Oh, yeah. Fishing
Hunting.
everywhere.
If you haven't hunted before, hunting is, it's an investment.
Oh, it's a big time investment.
Definitely.
If you want to make money hunting, you start with 2 million, and you might make $1 million.
Yeah.
So I thought, there's something to this, and I borrowed my father-in-law's shotgun, and it was an older shotgun. We had my buddy had his gear, and we'd go out to public areas. Fur Island was a public release area, but you could go out to the salt flats, and you could hunt. Basically public access, and it's all pass shooting at the time. So, when you're young and you don't have a lot of money, you just basically go out to the public area. You do as much as you can.
Yep.
And you learn a lot.
Do what you can when you can.
What you can when you can. So we hunted a lot of public access sites in between Marysville and Everett, because we grew up in Marysville and lived in Snohomish and Marysville, and it was close.
Okay.
So you go to where you know. A lot of friends of mine that I grew up with they had families that did big game hunting, so they were always gone for weeks at a time during their big game
Their
season.
fall hunting trip.
Their fall hunting trips. But obviously, I didn't grow up in a family that did a lot of hunting, so I wasn't really exposed to that.
So you were mostly a bird hunter.
Mostly a bird hunter.
Okay.
Just because of the time frame and the ability to be able to go out whenever you want, and you weren't stuck to a 2-week period.
And I feel like whenever you get introduced into a certain topic in the hunting, like say you know versus big game, that first bird hunt you went out and you fell in love with it, and it's just hard to get away from it.
I absolutely did, and the falling in love with it wasn't really because we shot a lot of birds. I mean,
it's just the experience.
We were a mess starting out.
Yeah,
we had so much.
There's a bird.
Oh yeah,
whoa. The bird's gone.
You know, you remember all these things, and I've killed lots of birds in my day, and the big harvests aren't the one that I remember. It was those little tiny things that stick out in my mind. You know, the first shotgun that I borrowed from my father-in-law, it had a firing pin issue, and it would dry fire and not
go off.
Not go off. I don't know how many times after that, and you know, over that season, my buddy's like, "Oh, you got to get rid of that thing." I'm like, "Well, I don't have my own shotgun, so it's
it works."
So I went out and I bought my first Mossberg 835 Ultimag, and the rest was history. Went from there, and you know, we would shoot trap every week in Marysville and Granite Falls. They had trap ranges back when it was affordable, and you know, we got kind of started there, and I started getting better at shooting and got better at public hunting.
Okay.
Which there's so much to learn from public areas. At first, you're just guessing. You don't know why the birds are doing what they're doing. You don't know what the pond, where to set up on the ponds. You're just out there. You're just fumbling through it, doing the best you can. And every once in a while, if you can come home with a bird, great.
How did you get your information on what was public and what was not public? Because they didn't have OnX when you first started, right?
No OnX, no. Barely even hunting and fishing shows on TV.
Was it mostly just from word of mouth?
Word of mouth.
Okay.
So you would get there and you don't even know if it's public or not.
Well, you knew it was public.
Most of it was posted.
Washington Fish and Game does a really good job at their public hunting areas. With birds, it is very crowded and over hunted.
Yeah.
So there's not as many spots.
5 or 6 cars parked there.
There's not a lot of spots open, and the ones that are open are flooded with people.
Yeah.
Just because of the population. So a lot of...
Is that even back then?
Yeah, way back then, too.
Yeah. So now it's probably even worse.
Yeah, now it's even worse. So, you know, the ones that could afford it, that had families and had better access to either boats or other type of hunting clubs, hunting leases.
Yeah. You
know, a lot of people would go over to Eastern Washington. Well, Eastern Washington for us, living in Marysville, Moses Lake's a 3-hour drive.
Right. Yeah.
So if you follow duck hunting, it's a little bit different than big game hunting. I mean, if you're not out there at 1 o'clock in the morning, you're not going to get a spot.
Yeah.
You're not going to get a pond.
It's almost like fishing.
Like fishing, right? And you see a lot of different videos and the podcasts talk about them too, where you see thousands of boats racing for those 1 or 2 spots, and that's kind of how it was like. And you just kind of realize that, you know, we could all be fighting for the same bird, but it's better to just kind of sit back and watch and pay attention to what's going on. So, you know, that race to harvest a bird, we had the same areas that we hunted in were also like Fur Island was a pheasant release area. So at 8 o'clock in the morning, there's orange vests and hunters out in the fields. Now we hunted the outskirts on the tidal flats, so we were kind of away from them. But then you just kind of saw, well, man, all of these people, and there's probably 30, 40 people out working the same fields.
How big are these fields?
Not big at all. You're talking maybe 20 acres, maybe 30 acres.
That many people?
So do you have people on the other side looking at you too?
Oh yeah.
Ooh, that's sketchy.
Yeah, we hunted an area in between Stanwood and Camino Island called Smith Farm, and it's all flooded now. And it was the same scenario. And when we first started, we would hunt Fur Island and we would hunt Smith Farm because it was kind of close. You're hunting the bays, you're doing pass shooting on birds. And 8 o'clock would come in, and all the pheasant hunters were there. Well, on foggy days, we were basically hunting what we called the point out on the corner of the property. And we had to walk back through those fields to get to the parking lot.
And you guys aren't wearing orange, right?
We're not wearing orange.
Oh.
And, you know, the first experience we had with interaction with pheasant hunters, you know, we were picking up in the morning. It was still kind of foggy, and we're like, okay, we're kind of done. Let's go. It's going to start getting loud with all the pheasant hunters here. We got maybe 20 yards, 30 yards into that field, and the fog lifted up. And there was a sea of orange. And all you could see was orange all around you.
That's crazy.
And before that, we heard a couple shots going off. And I thought, okay, well, this is getting kind of scary. We couldn't see them.
Are they all using shotguns as well?
They're all using shotguns as well. So that was our first experience with public land and too many hunters.
Overcrowded public lands.
And, you know, I've never really felt scared, but that moment kind of got to me. I'm like, you know, we're not where we're supposed to be, and this is not a good situation.
And this is in the 90s.
This was 96, 97, right around there.
So did you start thinking, okay, we need to start looking for public land that nobody knows about?
We started
looking for honey holes?
For even private land.
Private land?
So
like knocking on doors?
Knocking on doors, spending hours in the car driving up towards Bellingham, and you're looking at maps. Back in the day, we didn't have Onyx, we didn't have the internet, so you know, you're looking at what was called the Thomas guides back then. It's just open road map books. So we would open those up and just kind of, or the atlas, the Washington State Atlas, road atlases. And we're like, okay, where is everything? And then you just hit a road trip. You get enough money for gas money, and you just go. And we would spend the weekend hunting, but we were just driving. And then we would hear... A lot of driving. You know, we would hear about public areas like the Samish unit up in Skagit. It's basically across Padilla Bay from Anacortes. We're like, okay, well, let's go up there. And that was a new area and public and everything else. But same scenarios. You have a parking lot full of people. And
same thing even everywhere.
Same thing everywhere. And
I think that happens a lot with bird hunting, right?
It does. And then,
because the birds are only allocated to certain areas, for the most part.
Well, they're all concentrated around like water.
Yeah, water.
So any kind of public land with water
and feed. Yeah. Right. So those concepts with birds, early on in my hunting career, I started paying attention to what advantages am I going to have over everybody else that's out in these fields in order to be successful. So you start paying attention to the little things that nobody else is looking at.
Yeah.
Time of day and where the birds are roosting versus where they're feeding. You know, all that information started to play into where we would choose to hunt.
I've noticed with hunting, the more you can put into it, the more effort you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it.
The more information, and back then,
it's harder to get it.
Poor. Information was free. So you kind of, everybody had their secrets.
Right.
Yeah.
But then you learned if you kept secrets, you wouldn't get information either.
So you kind of had to give a little.
You have to give.
Take a little.
And then I thought to myself, you know, everybody's out here doing the same thing, and everything that I've learned, I'm basically going to give it away. Right. So I started to look at things a little bit differently, to where I stopped worrying about the harvest and started thinking about just memories and creating scenarios and building on those skill sets.
Well, memories last forever.
They do, and that skill
does not.
That skill that you learn, it pays dividends in the future because you don't make those simple mistakes.
So did you start slowly passing on some of your information and what you were doing?
Want to run across.
You were helping them.
Yeah. We'd come in. I was coming out. They would be coming in. I'd give them information. Hey, the birds are doing this. They're doing this. They're doing that.
Yeah. Okay.
Sit here. We were just over there. We weren't out far enough. Now the tide's out. Go ahead. And through that, they would give a little bit of information back.
Yeah.
And it was basically sharing. But the nicer you were, the more information you got.
Right.
And the more information you got, the better hunter you were. But then realizing as things got popular, TV shows started to come up, access to the internet. Everybody watching
internet.
I mean,
you can find so much info now on the internet.
You know, and then we found later on in our hunting career that a lot of the new hunters that were coming in, they had all the goods. They had all the information. They had no idea how to use it. What it didn't understand what it meant. Yeah, you had all the information. You had all the notes. You had all the cheat sheets. You had all the cheat codes.
Right.
You know, up, down, left, right, just like your favorite Nintendo game.
Yeah.
Right.
But going out and doing it completely different.
I feel like that's how it is right now.
It is.
Like Major, anybody can get all the information, but they don't know how to apply it out there when they get out there.
And that disconnect from information to application, taking that information and then putting it to test and then seeing the result, right? So basically like bird calling. At first, I was a mess. I sounded like anybody on a kazoo. I didn't know when my cadence was important, when to call birds, when not to call birds. And I learned it by just trial and error and listening. And then of course you have all the duck calling competitions. Everybody going crazy and trying to sound the best they can. But the most successful hunters were very reserved, very quiet, and their timing was impeccable. So I started paying attention to some of that stuff going, okay, well, it doesn't matter how good I think I sound.
Geez, this right here correlates to elk hunting so much.
A lot.
How many times somebody wants to like they're playing a trumpet in a jazz band,
right?
Versus why are you hitting that note when you're hitting that note?
If you guys are listening to this right now, apply it to elk hunting because it is money. What he's saying.
These are concepts that are shared between every hunting discipline, even fishing. You know, that information that you get from paying attention to those little things. And when you ask yourself, well, why is it when I think I sound good, the elk or the duck or, you know, the game that I'm going after, why does that game not think I sound good?
Right. You got to have that emotional connection with that animal.
Right.
It's all timing too.
You look at today's day and age where everything is instant stimulation. We get those endorphins from thinking we sound great.
Yep.
Or when we watch a video, you know, they're editing those videos where you're hearing them calling. And of course, that's what we want to see in a short amount of time.
Right. You're getting the highlights.
Now, when you get out there in the woods,
it's not like that.
It's not like that.
It's not like that at all.
Not like that. If somebody is just on that bugle and going crazy, you know, the elks are on the other side going, I
actually went through this exact same thing that we're talking about. I was watching tons and tons of videos on elk hunting, and I started perfecting my calling to where I thought I sound really good. Right. And I went out and I started hunting, and I'm doing what I'm seeing on these videos, and I'm getting nothing.
Right.
Nothing at all.
No feedback.
Nothing. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And so
sound exactly like that.
Yeah, I'm doing what they're doing. I'm hitting that high note, you know, and I'm moving and I'm doing it again and again and again, and nothing's working. And so that really, what we're talking about here is really hitting because I went through this exact same thing like maybe 5 years ago.
Yep. You always hear the slogans, less is more.
Yep. A lot of people say that.
Less can be more when done at the right time.
Yep.
So there's not just a one, you know, okay, well, if I do less, I'm going to be successful. Not necessarily.
You still got to do more before you do less.
And if you do less at the right time, you'll be more successful.
Right.
But in our heads, we think, oh, I did less, so therefore, if I just do
I'm going to get less
successful. It's like, there's more to it than that. Constantly ask the question, why? And I'm a safety supervisor down at the airport, and in the safety realm, when we do incident investigations, we ask the 5 whys. Anytime you ask why, within about that 5th why, you're going to get to the answer.
Okay.
So don't stop at the first why.
Yep.
Right? Why?
Even if you get an answer.
Why, even though I heard less is more, why when I call less, why was I successful or not successful? Oh, then you start putting it all together. You start putting information together. Well, I was calling less, but I wasn't calling at the right time. Well, why wasn't I calling at the right time?
Yeah.
Oh, because I didn't wait for this piece of information or this piece. And then you start going to seek those other answers. And when you finally get down to that 5th why, somewhere in there, you're going to answer that question.
Yep.
And then you take that piece of information, then you put it in your toolbox.
And you get better.
And you're like, okay, now in that situation, now not all situations are going to be that way.
Yep.
But we as consumers will take that information and we will tell ourselves that if I emulate what I'm seeing on the internet or on the TV shows, I will be successful. In some cases, that's true. Yep. You might have just hit it at the right time.
Get lucky.
Get lucky. Yep.
Right.
The thing with the TV is you're only seeing when they get lucky.
Yeah. You're not seeing the 15 hours of boredom. You're not seeing the 15 hours of just sitting there where the squirrel's ratting you out and your tree
pine cones are falling.
You're not sitting there twiddling your thumbs going, gosh, where the ducks flying? Are they flying? They're coming in? Or what time of day? Were they feeding all night long? I thought this was the spot. It looked great. And I was right where I wanted to be. This is everything it should be.
If I were recorded like 4 years ago, my elk hunting trip, it would have been 7 days of calling and zero elk.
And zero elk,
And it was
not a lot of signing.
And I was doing everything they were doing on the internet. Yeah. Like I was following it step by step. Yeah. And I thought, oh, this has to work because that's what you see works.
And the connection between that information and access to all that knowledge.
Yep.
And putting it together. So how do we do that, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of information on the internet.
Tons. How do you navigate all that information? As a matter of fact, I feel sorry for hunters today because there's too much.
Too much. I agree.
And
you don't have the trial and error of figuring out what works for you.
You have to go through that. You have to take that information and apply it in the field and find out what part of that information fits what part of the puzzle.
Yep.
Right.
And once you learn that, then you can actually start getting that experience and start developing what really does work and what doesn't work.
Think about all the podcasts that you've ever watched. Think about all of the professionals and seasoned hunters. Think about when they talk about how they learn things and who taught them that. I've never heard one say that they learned it from a podcast.
No, it's almost all of them are all from trial and error.
Or I learned this from this mentor.
Yeah.
I learned this from my father, from my grandfather. We're losing the ability to mentor our future hunters.
Yeah.
Because we have so much information, we don't know how to give it away. We have access to it, but what does it mean? How are we putting the pieces of the puzzle together? How are we lining up that information in order to take a brand new hunter, children?
Yep.
Right? Our children are connected to the internet constantly. Instant stimulation all the time. So when you have your child unplug and you take them out in the woods,
it doesn't apply.
Doesn't correlate,
right? Until you actually have them plug in to nature
and have the experience out there.
And then you start mentoring them with knowledge and with information, with the things that they're getting from the internet, right?
Yeah.
What was that sound, Dad? Well, that was this bird. That was this squirrel. Well, how do you know that? Because I've spent hours and hours and hours out in the woods and thinking, well, God, what is that sound?
Yeah.
Right? We're not doing that now because we have that instant gratification of watching a video and having it all work. But what we're not seeing is the thousands upon thousands of hours put into gaining those skills, getting that knowledge and putting it all together. And then not only that, filming it. Right?
Yeah, that's another aspect.
The difficulty of filming that and then putting it into an edited version so you could get your whole story. You could show everything that's there in a 30-minute clip or in a 20-minute or 15-minute video.
Yeah.
The difficulty to get that done is mind-blowing if you actually break it down and think about it.
It's very hard.
And there's thousands of podcasts out there. There's thousands of TV shows and there's a lot of different things that we look at and go, oh, well, I like this show because it does show some of this and some of that. I'm a painter by trade. So remember Overhauling, when the Overhauling TV show came out? I watched a lot of those shows and you'd watch the process of them painting. You're like, well, gosh, in a 30-minute show, they're only showing maybe 10 minutes or so of the painting process.
If that just a snippet.
But it takes
I know
hours, if not days, to get it to do this.
40 hours worth of work that they cut out. And I thought, well, I know, but how does everybody else know? The amount of time, effort, and skill set does it take? So when I started thinking and seeing these things, I started applying it to everything that I do. My career, when I hunt, when I fish, I started looking for those little tiny things that everybody else was ignoring. And we ignore information more today than we ever have, because back in the day, you didn't have a choice but to pay attention to all that stuff.
That's all there was.
That's all there was. Now it's all instantaneous, but where does it come from? Right? We have all of our children believing that our food comes from the grocery store.
Right.
That's where I get my food.
Now, in the archery world, you know what it takes to get up close and personal to that supermarket out in the woods. right?
It's not easy.
And it's not easy. And if you don't have all your information right, you don't eat.
Well, I think a lot of people think it's just, I'll get my bow, I'll go out there, and within 5 minutes, there's one. Yeah. Pull back, bam.
Well, Cabela's is right down the road. I can buy all the gear I need, right? I can be successful, and then all of a sudden you go out in the woods and you're like, oh.
There's the learning curve to this.
There's more to it than that.
Yep.
I mean, if you're down at Northwest Trek and you're hunting out of their train, yeah, you'll probably see lots of animals. But who has the opportunity?
Hey, where do I sign up for that?
Right? I mean, that's what we're dealing with. It's like that's the mentality of our hunters today.
Yeah,
I think it's just
going to be easy.
Oh, if I buy this, there's no way I can't be.
And especially after listening to all these different podcasts and videos and stuff, they think
they say you will guarantee to get an elk.
Yeah,
or
but
whatever using these tactics.
If you put everything together right. But what they don't tell
trial
you is
and error too.
Which order do you put those in?
Right. They don't show you exactly why they're doing it.
Yeah. Here's the anybody buy a piece of furniture from IKEA?
I have.
Yeah, you ever put it together? It comes in pieces.
I don't like doing it. I mean, my wife always has me putting stuff together. And
they'll give you the instructions, but we all know those instructions
suck.
I mean, you're gonna hit roadblocks,
right?
And you're like, wait, and then you're gonna start putting things that you think make sense into there, but it's like, no, there's an order for this.
Right?
There's a way to assemble this information.
I usually get that thing and just crumble it up, throw it away.
Yeah.
And then you're the guy that gets halfway through it and realize, oh, where's this bolt go?
Yeah, you're like,
I always end up with like 16 bolts left over. Like, they just gave me extras in here.
And we all do it. We all do it.
Yep.
Right? And I'm guilty of it. You know, I'll put something together and I'll try to take a shortcut or something. And my wife's like, well, you know, it's funny how you can go out in the hunting fields and you can put all this attention and information into it. But then when it comes to something that you really don't want to do, you just
push through it quick.
Throw it to the side.
I'm like, guilty. Hey, you're right. I don't go through all that. But out there in the hunting world, I've spent enough time out there to realize the importance of it. You know, does that lesson always translate over to real life? Not always.
Nope.
I mean, but hey, here we are.
Yep. So when you were out duck hunting, you did that first shotgun hunt, does that correlate to the companies that you got involved in?
It does. Cabela's wasn't around here in the Northwest for us. It was, back east, and we would get the Cabela's magazines in the mail.
Yep.
And we had very little access to that big picture structure. So we had local stuff here.
All local hunters.
Yeah, all local hunters, local supply stores, local outfitters and things like that. But over the years, we upped our game. We got our Cabela's. We got our hunting and fishing TV shows like Fishing and Hunting Northwest. And a lot of the things were, okay, now we start to become mainstream, right? I mean, hunting and fishing lifestyle in the Northwest compared to the rest of the country, it's a little bit different, right? There's a lot of opportunity here. There's tons.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not a lifestyle like it is in the Midwest. You hear about Texas. Let's just take Texas, for example. I mean, everybody's got food plots in Texas, and they're basically harvesting animals to hunt every year, and they've got their hit lists of animals that they want to harvest. And, well, in the Northwest,
you don't really have that.
You don't really have that.
And they just banned baiting now. So
yeah, the banned baiting, but you talk about that industry where you go to Cabela's and you see all the game feeders, you see all the bags of food plot stuff.
Yep.
It's like, well, gosh, that's in the Midwest. Everybody has access to that.
And I love going down to Cabela's and seeing the big bags of corn and they got a deer on them, and I'm like, people understood this stuff doesn't really work here.
Right. I mean, it's a different environment. You have to kind of think a little bit differently, and our woods are a little bit, they're tricky. It's not the same. And you pay attention, like when I say pay attention to that little stuff, those are the little details that go, wait a minute, a lot of these shows and a lot of this information is coming out of regions that
don't apply to here.
Don't really apply to here. Some of the concepts do, some of them don't. But how do you figure that out? There's no easy button.
No.
Right?
That's why I'm saying on those shows and the podcast, they don't tell you why they're doing it.
No.
Or like the reason behind it.
For instance, you go to dog training, because I went through with my bird dog, my first bird dog. We had some struggles, and so I had to learn a lot on Well, what happens if, you buy a book on training? Well, great. That book was written for the dog that was trained.
Yeah.
So all the techniques and everything else in concept and in theory should work. But what happens if you don't have that push button dog? What happens if you don't have
dog?
What happens if you have a dog that is ruined? And now you've got to bring that dog back from a traumatic experience. There's no book out there that tells you how to do that. So when you take these techniques and these theories and everything else, you try to apply them, you're like, well, wait a minute, why isn't it working?
Right.
You have to go back to the roots. You got to go, wait a minute, I got to step back and go, okay, well, yeah, the book says to do this, but the book said to do this on this particular dog, and great, it worked. But they don't tell you behind the scenes that the 40 dogs that it didn't work on, they got washed out.
Yep.
It's just like the information now that they give you. They give it to you, and you think, oh, I'll go out there and use it, but it doesn't apply. And you got to learn it anyway.
They don't give you all of what you really want to know, because it's not sellable.
Right.
They got to be able to sell it.
They got to be able to sell it. And of course, just like in anything, the information that's put out there is generalized, because if I only write a book about training one specific, say, troubled dog, how does that relate to everybody else that might not have that?
Right.
So anything and any of the information that we're getting, a lot of time isn't refined. It's generalized. So you got to pick out the meat and potatoes and go, okay, well, what works, what doesn't work, what's good, what's not good.
And then you go through that learning curve anyway with it.
You're going to get in the woods. Now you have an advantage because you have all the pieces of the puzzle. You just have to go out and put them together.
Right.
Yeah. Now back in the day, we didn't have the pieces of the puzzle. We had to build each piece of the puzzle as we went.
Which is almost better.
In some ways it is.
In some ways. But the time and effort it took to actually get that information, nowadays you have it in an instant.
Yep.
You just Google it.
Right.
Now you just need to take it and go out there and apply it. So the hard work's done for you, right? But the disconnect to putting it all together and making it work in the woods.
And that's why the success rates haven't changed. I feel like it.
Because it's an art, right? Hunting is a skill set.
I do have a question on that, though. So the success rates for big game is around that 10% across the West. Now, they say that there's more hunters in the woods now than there was back in the day. If that success rate is still 10%, does that really correlate to there's more animals being taken off the landscape? Because say there's 100,000 hunters now, and it's 10%, versus there was 50,000 and it was still 10% back in the day.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. If you look at, break it down to the percent of hunters that are successful. What efforts are they putting in to become successful versus the mass majority of the hunting population that's really not willing to put in the work or the effort? So it's chasing elk.
So we have thousands more people that aren't getting it done, and the same amount of people are still getting it done.
Basically, it's like this. Me and you go out and we're hunting one elk. I'm only willing to walk a mile, but you're willing to walk 15. Who's going to be more successful on that elk? He is.
Why? He's got a better chance, for sure.
A way better chance. So the amount of hunters that are willing to put in the work and the effort and do the things right and find that information
is still the same as it was back then.
Thank you. You can add as many hunters as you want, right? Like you can take 1,000 archers, brand new. Which ones are going to consistently hit the target? The ones who are willing to put in the work.
Right. Yep.
The ones that are willing to make the adjustments. The ones that are willing to go farther with the information that they got, not just expecting the first time I go out there with my bow, I'm going to hit the target right where I want it because I bought this $1,000 bow from Cabela's and I watched the video on how to set my sights and everything else. It's like,
you still got to put in the effort.
Then you're going to get buck fever right when that,
of course,
right when that deer comes out, and you're going to shoot it in the butt.
So data can be manipulated whichever direction you want it. I see at work, I see a lot of data come across my table, across my desk, and translating that data is where the skills, that's where the money is taking that data and not just taking it at face value. Go, wait a minute. What does it mean? How do we get that data and move the numbers to where we want it to go? Because anybody can just spit out data all day long. Sometimes it doesn't mean anything. Sometimes you got to look beyond it and go, wait a minute.
What's it really
we have
mean?
More hunters and we have the same success. Well, in theory, more hunters and more kills, right?
Right.
Not necessarily. The more hunters that are misguided, they're equipped, but they're misguided. They don't have the right information. They've never been taught the skills to put it all together. Right? Now imagine if there was that many hunters that were skilled, and you can go down the argument, well, some of the hunters that are out there don't want that many hunters out there that are that skilled. Because that presents its own setup.
And that's what a lot of people say when it comes to these podcasts, because they worry about it. They say you guys are giving too much information.
Could be. Sure.
And you're making it too easy for these guys to go out there. But they don't realize that effort that you have to put in is what makes the difference.
There's still a learning curve.
You're making it harder on yourself because you're flooding our woods with people who don't know what they're doing.
Right.
You're flooding the woods with people that aren't willing to put in the effort, and their ethics and their knowledge and everything else are way off.
Yep. And
it presents problems. And there's going to be problems no matter what you do, and how you move the needle one way or another is you have to use the data, of course, and you have to pay attention to what it's saying and how many people are in the woods and what it's doing to the population of the animals. Are we pushing deer and elk? Are we pushing them out of their normal areas because, for that 2-week time period, we're flooding the woods with orange?
Oh, they for sure are.
Right. So you look at other states that have wider and longer seasons. Is that a better option? Is it a worse option? Because some would argue, if you're having hunters out in the woods for longer periods of time, it creates different sets of problems and everything else. I'm like, yeah, you might be right.
So I'm seeing a lot of Washington kind of starting, or not even just Washington, but all across the West, starting to do what Washington specifically is doing with their fishing. Mm-hmm. And they're closing the river, this specific river, because the fish numbers are too low. And then all those people that normally fish that river are going to the one that's open.
Right.
And I feel like that's happening a lot all across the West with public land.
True.
They shut down or they close this chunk of land, and then now that land's not available. And then all those hunters go to another land, and now they've got more people there.
So I've hunted in the bird world. I've hunted a lot of public and I've hunted a lot of private. The difference is the management style. When you hunt public, it's open. It's going to get overhunted. The birds are going to get overpressured, and they're going to move on. And the type of hunting that you're doing in those areas is very limited. It's pass shooting only. Well, birds are not dumb. Animals are not dumb, right? When they sit and they're roosting out in the sound, and they're hearing, hey, on this 150-acre piece of property,
boom, boom, boom,
I'm hearing shots.
Yeah, they're not going to go there
7 days a week. Well, how come everything, we're talking about sky busting, right? Well, how come you're taking shots at 125 yards in the air? Because the birds won't come down. Certain times in the morning they will. When they're kind of groggy and they kind of forget a little bit. But after that 10, 15, 20 minutes worth of prime hunting, what happens? The birds go, oh no, up and over, down into their feed fields.
Yeah, they go down.
They figure it out. They get educated. You hunt private, you're like, okay, well, we'll go out and we know that the birds are coming in, feeding in the ponds in the morning. So we're going to go set out in the morning and we're going to hunt a certain pond. Great. We go out there, we're successful. We get a little bit of birds, but we're going to hunt the afternoon. So what we do is we give from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We take that time off, let the birds rest.
Let it quiet down.
The afternoon, we won't go out to that same pond. We'll go out to a different pond. We won't overpressure that pond.
Pressure is everything.
And, you see big flocks of birds come in. Say I have 3 hunters and 20 birds come flying in. Well, we're not going to take those shots. We're going to see what they do. We might get up, stand up out of our blind. We might walk out and push those birds off that pond.
So with public land and pressure, do you think that it's possible to hone in and put that effort into what you think would make you stand out better than those other hunters that are on public?
You can. I mean, it's all information, right? And then you have to go out and just trial and error.
Because we've noticed in the area that we elk hunt, there's quite a bit of pressure, but we're putting that effort in to be that step above everybody else.
That extra mile.
And we're still getting a lot of interactions and a lot of opportunity. So with the public land, I think if you put in that little bit of effort, you will be able to still find success.
You'll look at, like, say, Eastern Washington in the bird world. Eastern Washington, they shut down certain days of the week, and they don't overpressure, public lands. On Western Washington, there's a lot of hunters that are 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Now, it's kind of a catch-22 because you want everybody to have an opportunity to hunt. But on the flip side, I know the success rates of not pressuring those animals, right? Not pushing them. And then hunters will adapt. Hunters will do what they have to do to try to get their harvest.
You think that's because we're slowly losing public land?
It is part of it.
A big part of it.
Part of it. And we're not managing the lands that we have. Right?
For the animals.
Any type of successful, you look at any hunting lodge, hunting group, anything like that. What makes them successful is their management. Their management is hugely important, right? In the public lands, we rely on our fish and game. We rely on our public funds. We rely on a lot of different things. And we, unfortunately, don't monitor their successes and failures as well as we should.
So why is Washington specifically so much worse at managing all these animals and public lands and stuff?
My opinion is they're worse than other locations because it's not in the culture.
Okay.
We're losing our cultural and our heritage, right? You take the Midwest. Midwest is very family oriented. They're very tradition rich, and they're very heritage strong, which means that those hunting traditions pass down from generation to generation to generation.
So we're talking as like not as a specific family, but as in like a whole population or heritage.
A community, right? And you look at, in the bird world, in the pheasant world, you look at the Dakotas. People from all over the United States flood to the Dakotas during pheasant season. But it takes that community mindset in order to preserve what they have there. Here in the Northwest, we have a lot of different things culturally that are not really focused on fish and game.
Yeah.
And a lot of our folks in the city, I grew up in the city of Marysville. I didn't grow up around hunting or anything else, but I gravitated towards it. And a lot of our youth right now, especially being connected to the internet and electronics,
they're not even getting the opportunity.
We're not passing that.
It really actually scares me quite a bit to see what's going to happen to the hunting industry and fishing in the next 10 years because of how much kids are just not being introduced to it.
Well, I had a guy I was talking to the other day. He's like, yeah, I took my son out in the woods, and in 10 minutes he was so bored. He goes, I wanted to force him to stay in the woods, but yet I didn't want to make it a negative experience.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're faced with how do we not make it a negative experience? That's a huge question in the hunting industry. It's a huge question in our monies that are being spent in taxes and going to our federal government and how it's being given back. And what are we doing with our programs and our hunters education programs, and everything else. And you look at the interest. There's not a lot of interest in our youth anymore. Like when I grew up, it was all about hunting and fishing, and there wasn't a negative attachment to guns and weapons and the hunt and the woods.
You go to high school and somebody would have the shotgun in the back.
It was not
there,
a big deal.
ready to go.
It wasn't really thought of.
My daughter just passed Hunter's Ed, and when we went to do the actual shooting with the range and stuff to do the final test, there was out of the 40, there's probably about 40 people there, and out of the 40, there was probably 2 kids.
Yeah, and it is sad. We are losing because it's a lost art, and it's not just hunting. My wife and I have been a part of horse clubs and dog training clubs. It used to be a lifestyle. Now it's an expensive hobby.
Yes.
And unfortunately, when it's a lifestyle, it's every day. When you own horses, it's not just when you go out, saddle up and ride. It's every morning feeding. It's picking up poop. It's going and stacking hay in the barn. It's work. When it's a lifestyle, you don't think about it. It's just what you do.
Yep.
And it's 24
You appreciate it a lot more.
It doesn't turn off, right? And not to blame the internet, but the internet and our need for instant gratification and instant stimulation comes from it's kind of cool with the technology, right? You're like, oh, hey, great. But what happens when it's quiet? What happens when the power gets turned off?
Everybody's bored.
Are our kids going outside and going in the woods?
No.
Now, my daughter spends a ton of time outside. And I don't even want to discourage that because she's using her imagination. When you use your imagination, you start to connecting to things that you can't get from the internet.
Right.
Spending time out in the woods in a tree stand. Yeah.
Nothing better than it.
For the 10-minute block of time that you're actually having animals close and near you versus the 30 hours you're spending in that tree stand. Right? You're not getting instant gratification. I'm going to spend 30 hours out here to get 10.
Well, there's something to say, there's something to be said about being out there in the woods, but like when the sunrise is coming up, that it's just a different, it's a different feeling. It almost makes you feel like you're connected with nature.
Hot summer day and you're out in the woods and everything's dewy and damp and you start seeing the steam start coming off the leaves, and you're not going to get that from the internet.
No.
You don't know what it smells like when the leaves are drying out in the middle of the woods, when the sun's shining through, when the sun's shining down through the trees. You're not going to get that connection.
Well, if you think about it, way back in the day, all there was hunting.
Yeah.
That's all we had.
You needed it for survival.
You needed it for survival.
You needed it for subsistence. You needed it to basically put food on the table and support your family.
Right.
You know, nowadays, that's not profitable.
Yeah.
Right?
No, it's too expensive. It's cheaper to go down and buy a half cow than it is to go hunting.
But even that half cow takes work. Right? And then who profits from it? And who's pushing the fact that they want you to go get your food from the grocery store? They don't want you to go out and harvest your own animal.
Same people that are trying to take the lands and all of our rights away.
Or keep you out of those lands. Yeah. Well, wait a minute. Do you have a management plan for those lands? Well, no, we're just going to let nature take over. Well, nature, unfortunately, is very cruel to itself.
Yes, it is.
And look at our forest fire management systems in the state. When we don't manage those forest areas, our wildfires go through the roof.
They go crazy.
It's insane.
Yep.
So when we manage it, when we harvest and when we control it, and we have a plan to say, hey, this reduces wildfires and damage.
Well, we can't put our fingerprint on the map and then say that we just let nature do its own thing while we're intervening with all this,
It's been forever.
Yeah.
We're not going away, right? Nature isn't just going to take over and
be happy again.
It takes effort. It takes management. It takes our wildlife biologists. It takes all the data that's created. It takes all the fundraising. It takes all of the lobbying and the politics. And I mean, it's collective, but we can't just appease to one side and not think about the other, right? When you talk about conserving what we're dealing with, conservation means a lot of different things. Conservation in general thinking is just, we're protecting the land and the animals.
Yeah.
That's what I thought when I first started hearing about conservation.
It's your go-to.
Right.
It's what everybody kind of thinks of, but what they forget is all the time and effort that organizations like the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, all these different entities and what they put into conservation.
They put a lot into it.
I mean,
there's a bigger picture than what you see.
Money and, right now with Washington State, our licenses are increasing 38%. Majority of that's going for operating costs. Well, okay, yeah, I get that the operating costs, but what are we getting out of those operations?
Not much.
Are we and as our resources benefiting from operating? Right now, you're talking about. I don't like to get into a ton of politics, but in our society right now, we're talking about waste, fraud, and abuse. Okay, well, we're going to increase your guys' fees because it just costs us more to operate. Okay, well, how efficient are you in your operation? Are you being efficient in your operations?
Yeah, where's all this money going?
And are we not looking at it to go, hey, are we maximizing what we're doing? Does it pay dividends out in the woods? Does it pay dividends to the?
There's not enough people out there that are checking them on that.
Right. So it's kind of a catch-22, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we just have the internet to look. I'm like, it looks like they're doing what they're doing.
Hey, save the environment. Well, what does that mean? Save the environment while you live in the city and you go through. You're not in touch with what it
really means.
What it means,
right?
And the only way to get in touch with what it means is to get out in the woods and get connected to that and understand. It's like, oh, wait a minute, this is all smoke and mirrors. You're telling me that all this funds and we were doing the right thing, but yet very little of it's actually going to what you're telling me it's going to. So then you lose trust. You lose public trust, right? Well, back in the day, yeah, there was the same kind of things that are happening today, just at a smaller scale.
Right.
Well, now we've blown it up tenfold
because of the internet, and people can see it
because of access to information, because of manipulating information, and not checking what you expect.
And a lot of people think,
but verify.
A lot of people think whatever they see on the internet is real too.
Sure, but how do you prove it? Fact check. You know how I fact check? I go out in the woods and go, wait a minute, I'm not seeing what you're saying.
Yeah.
No, I don't wait for some website that I agree with to tell me what that is. It's the proof is in what you see, what you feel, what you smell.
It's like the same thing with the rivers. They say they're shutting it down because they need the fish population to get better.
Right.
And then you come back in 5 years, 10 years, and it's the same thing, and nothing's changed.
And what are we doing? We
need to shut it down longer.
Are we still overfishing? Are we still not?
Are we over netting?
Are we not treating our rivers and our resources correctly? Are we not giving back? Are we not supporting fish hatcheries? Are we not? Where's all the money? Yeah, the same entities back in the day, the native tribes were heavy into the fish hatcheries and giving back, right?
If you look at the natives and how they treat their fish in their rivers, mm-hmm. It is 10 times better.
Yeah.
Than how WDFW does our fish.
You go back in the day where efforts were actually you could take, because
they care.
100% of what was created was given back. Now it's, we're going to say that we're giving back, but we're only going to take 10% of that, what we're generating, and give it to that.
And the other is going to go in our pocket.
The other is going to operating costs and all this other stuff. You're like, well, wait a minute.
Where's the big bonus going?
We're better than that. We have the ability to go out and use common sense.
Is there any way to fix that?
I think culturally is how we're going to have to do it. It's if you just keep going with the path of least resistance and the status quo.
How do you fix the cultural problem, though?
You get more people involved.
More younger, you think?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, we got to get our kids involved.
More people that have never been
archery.
Through my dad.
That's how you do it.
Okay.
Give it away. Get somebody interested. I didn't find my passion in hunting in the outdoors until later in life, but somebody
showed it to you. I feel like we've kind of done that a little bit, like through our work, like just starting this YouTube.
Yep.
At our work, I'm hearing more people talking about how they want to maybe start shooting a bow.
Yeah.
And maybe start hunting. So I'm seeing that a little bit of an effect. And I think if more people were doing that, we would have more people.
One step at a time.
Yeah.
It's like I talked about earlier. When I go out and I hunt, to me, it's not about the harvest. It's about it's about the time spent. It's about the conversations. It's about watching that sunrise over the cattails in the marsh.
Yeah, we don't need more hunters specifically, but we need more people that care about it.
We need more connected hunters and connected people that are in our industry that right now in our society, you don't have a lot of passion. You don't have a lot of, and there's different levels of passion.
Yep.
When I talk about things that I care about, I'm passionate about it. Do I do it as much as I want to? Maybe not. But the more people that you can have talk passionately about something they care about, the more they're going to get involved, the more they're going to contribute, the more they're going to care about like how you vote and what does it mean. It's like, wait a minute, we want to preserve some of these things that we grew up to be passionate about, right? I want our future generations to have the ability to be passionate about hunting and fishing and doing the things in life that I'm passionate about. I want them to have that same opportunity. And right now, if we're creating artificial passion, it doesn't last.
It doesn't work.
I think
once that video, once you hit end, what now?
I think it was, I want to say it was Corey Jacobson. Somebody told him that you teach somebody to love something and it'll teach them to take care of that.
Mm-hmm. And what do they do? Then give it away.
Yep.
Give it away, folks. Give away what you learn. Yep. Because if you don't give it away, you keep it to yourself, where does it go?
That's why I'm so okay with, like, I want to help people.
Yeah.
And not only be successful, but I want to help people get out there and feel what I feel when I'm out there. That just connection with nature and that love for it. I can live every day in the mountains. I love it.
Me too. It's so much fun out there.
The value of giving something back, to me, is more powerful than going out and doing something that I put a lot of time and effort into.
Right.
When I can give it away and I watch somebody else
be successful, it's amazing.
Oh my God. It's, you can't describe it. You know, when I got involved with Outdoors for Our Heroes, early on, for me, it was about hunting, but it created a situation where we were dealing with our veterans and just being able to watch them take something that I've worked hard at and benefit from it and how it changed their way of thinking. To me, when I saw that, I was just like,
this is this.
I had no idea that's what, I mean, you hear about it. You're like, you know, all the different things. You go, oh yeah, if you go and do a nonprofit, you're gonna feel so much better. It's like, okay, you hear it.
Yeah.
You go, where is it?
It's in the back of your head.
When you feel it and you see it and it becomes personal.
It changes their life.
And not just the what everybody believes they're gonna feel, because it's different in everybody. When I had that connection, I saw the look on somebody's face, and it was just like, okay, this is bigger than what I thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm getting out of it is completely different than what I imagined, right? And that's what we're dealing with people that get this false passion real quick. They get out there and then they're not paying attention to all the other things that's going to be personalized for them because they want that instant satisfaction.
And you were a co-founder of this?
Yeah, you know, Jason Brown was the founder of Outdoors for Our Heroes. He came to me at work and asked me if I was interested in doing a nonprofit, an organization. And I thought, yeah, you know, I was a duck hunter and he was a big game hunter. And it all kind of stimulated after I told him, hey, I'll take you hunting. Let's go duck hunting, because he was into duck hunting. And I was hunting on some private land and being very, very successful. So this was early spring. So hunting season's
still a ways away.
Still a ways away, right? We're talking October, November. So it wasn't until about November that I actually got him out and took him hunting. And it just opened up the floodgates. He's like, oh my gosh, and we had a great time. And then, you know, he said, hey, I've got this idea. You know, I want to do a nonprofit. I want to give back. Are you interested? And I'm like, yeah,
why not?
I'm totally interested.
Give back.
And it's still going today, right?
It's going very, very strong. You know, it started out in 2016. We had maybe a couple grand in our pocket and an idea and a dream, and it took off. And it took off so good that I had to step away because I just physically
so much time.
It was all volunteer, and I just couldn't, you know, give everything that I wanted to give to that.
Yep.
You know, it was based out of Olympia. I worked in Seattle, lived up here in Snohomish, so that commute every month.
That's a lot of commute.
It's a lot. And, you know, it was going strong enough to where when I made that decision to step down, there was enough people involved to where
it kept going.
Man, it took off.
Is that just in Washington or is that all everywhere?
But they do a lot of different, you can look it up. It's outdoorsourheroes.net.
Okay.
And awesome organization.
We'll put a link down in the description so you guys can see that.
Awesome organization. I haven't been involved in quite a while. I still follow them. I still support them. They do awesome stuff. They take wounded veterans out on hunts, fishing trips all over, from Alaska to Africa, South America to Mexico.
Oh, so they're big.
They're all over. We started out small, and when we started out, we raised enough money through a raffle here or there to take a couple veterans out.
That's so cool. You guys did that.
Jason Brown come to me one day at work. He said, hey, I just bought a booth at the Sportsman Show. I thought, okay.
You're like, what does this mean?
That was November, and the Sportsman Show is the end of January. We had nothing. We had a couple fold-out tables. And I thought, well, this isn't going to work.
We can't go out there looking like this.
Sportsman Show.
That's how mean you were going to probably start.
Yeah. You know, again, the organization didn't have a dime to our name. And I'm like, well, this is $600 just for the booth. Okay.
Is that how much it costs to run a spot?
Yeah.
You got to just put your trust in it and see where it goes.
Way more now, but this was way back in 2016 when that was our nonprofit cut that we did, and I think it was like $1,200 a booth for a 10 by 10.
So not much space either.
Not much space. So, I had a cedar fence fall down in my yard. So I had a whole bunch of extra wood and everything else, and I thought, I'm just going to build a trade show
something right here.
And so I just started in my garage. It took me about a month to put together this thing, and then we ended up going to the Sportsman Show. We had no clue what we were doing. We were just trying to keep our head above water. And the Sportsman Show was successful, and we got donations. We got a cooler from Yeti. We had a bow donated, and we were just getting exposure, right?
A lot of raffles.
A lot of raffle type stuff. Of course, you have to do that nonprofit stuff. And at the end of that Sportsman Show, Jason looked at us and said, "Hey, I booked the Landmark Theater in Tacoma for a dinner auction." And I'm like,
"You're like, that's pretty
cool." Whoa, what?
Yeah, like 12 or 13,000.
Like, man, you're jumping in the pool quick here.
And so, if you want to get on board and you want to do this, you have to have
passion.
You have to have a driver, and Jason was that driver. And we just held on to anything that you could hold on to, door handle, bumper, anything. But that train is going. And
it's not stopping.
He was a driving force, and we just did it. And it took a lot of effort and a lot of time, a lot of volunteer hours. But we put our heads together. We got all of our donations, and we got everything rolling. We run into that night. We don't know how we're going to pay for this dinner. We're selling every ticket we can. We're like, just make enough money tonight to pay the bill.
Yeah.
And I think it was about 12 or 13,000, give or take. And we're scared to death.
Imagine.
He's like, this is gonna work.
He was so far down the road from us, and we were just trying to keep up.
Yeah.
And but that driving force, and if he didn't have that passion and that will to grind. And
you got to jump off that ledge.
Oh my goodness! And when you're tied to the guy who jumped off the ledge,
you're going too.
That's not a good feeling.
It's like we're going down no matter what.
We did it, and at the end of the night, we counted it up. We made almost $50,000 or so. We're like, oh my gosh, this
worked.
This is working. We stayed. We had our reservations at first. We had a lot of fears, and what I learned from some of those fears were sometimes what you're gaining out of it, you can't expect it. You don't see it coming.
You got to just put your trust in it.
You just have to be willing to jump.
Yep.
You have to be willing to just say, hey, whatever happens, happens. It's not in my hands. And just go with it and make adjustments. And that lesson and that time that I spent with that organization was mind-blowing to me, because I learned hunting wasn't for me. Kind of changed things. Life happens. You're me going out and just hunting to go hunting for myself. That wasn't really doing it anymore, right? So once I started hunting with other people that didn't have access to that, didn't have the mental ability to make themselves passionate about something, when you expose them to that and you see those aha moments, especially in our wounded veterans that are traumatized in their own way, when they connect to something that just gives back, that feeling was just like, whoa.
That's the feeling. That probably
it did. It hit me from the side because I didn't expect it.
Yeah.
Right. And I started thinking back of all the times I spent out hunting and fishing and doing all those things, and thinking about, it's not about the harvest. It's about the time that you're spending. It's about all those little things that we tend to not pay attention to. Those are what, in my mind, I think about.
And everybody always thinks it's always about the big bull.
It's always about that big bull. But nobody talks about that cow that snuck up behind you and started sniffing you and freaked you out. Right? Those stories are
the moments.
Those are the moments that are going to stick to you. When you're out deer hunting and a bear walks underneath your tree stand. Nobody talks about that stuff. But that's what matters. That's the good stuff.
Yep.
Around the woods, you never know what's going to happen.
No, you don't.
It's woods. It's wild.
When you're open to all of the things that you don't understand or you don't think is going to happen, when they start happening and you can be like me, reflect back on it going, oh my gosh, all that stuff is what I remember. I don't remember the time that I limited out. Yeah, okay, I got a limit on birds. Great. But I remember that one time that we only got 2 birds. I remember that one shot. It was a 75-yard shot, side to side, over across a ditch. And yeah, boom, I dusted that bird. Now I got to spend the next 45 minutes walking all the way down, all the way back to that mark, while my buddy stayed there as a marker where that bird went down. But we remember that
those
shot,
experiences.
That experience, here comes this bird. I said, I'm gonna shoot at it. My buddy's like, don't take that shot. You're thinking, no way. 75-yard shot, side to side. I led that bird by about 15, 20 feet, and I let one shot go, and I folded that bird. It's just like, yeah, probably should I have taken that shot? Maybe not, but that shot I remember. And that little thing, even though it was just one duck, out of the thousands of ducks I've harvested, that one duck stands out more than any other. Those little things are how we're going to get people interested in conserving what we worked hard to build and what nature's worked hard at providing us. If we don't give that type of experience back to our youth and to future hunters and future generations, it's not going to last, because we're not going to.
It won't last much longer.
Well, let's switch gears here a little bit, and I want to see what you think about this whole public land selling off. Have you heard about this?
I have heard about it, and I've done a little bit of reading on it. Kind of conflicted.
Yeah, I'm conflicted
I don't understand why we're selling off any public land.
Because technically that's our land.
Yeah.
Why is that even eligible to be sold?
Why are we needing to sell it?
That's what I'm.
That would be my question.
Because that's what I'm wondering. There's already land out there for sale.
5 whys.
Yeah.
We gotta ask 5 questions.
What happens when you get to the first why when they tell you don't ask why anymore?
You ask another question.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
What are we talking about here? I don't follow politics enough, because that's a rabbit hole you can get down. You can get lost in your life. I mean, I want to live my life, but the importance of understanding where that is going and listening to the people that are passionate about that and how that is connected to us and what it means for our lands and access to lands and everything else.
Yep.
Yeah, we should have those conversations. We shouldn't slip these things into massive bills and to where we're not paying attention to everything individually, going, wait a minute, we should analyze what it means to make these decisions. Because in my personal life, if I'm reckless and I make bad decisions, well, nobody else comes in and saves me from it. I have to be accountable for the outcome, right?
Right.
So why are we not holding our public figures and our leadership? Why are we not holding our leadership accountable to the same things? Something to ask. When, of course, they're going to tell you, oh, you shouldn't have to worry about it. Well, yeah, I kind of do.
Yeah.
Because if you don't care about it, then who is going to care about it?
Right. Nobody.
Right. Yeah. And we shouldn't put our things that are important to us over things that are important to somebody else. But what I'm saying is, at least come together and have the conversation. At least say, hey, well, why are we selling this land? What's the need?
They're saying that to build on it, for residential.
Yeah, but that's the thing. A lot of the land that is for sale are up in the mountains. Yeah, you got Snoqualmie Pass is for sale, Stevens Pass, Mount Baker.
And they'll tell you it's not
Mount
for
Pilchuck.
that. They'll tell you it's it's not going to affect. Well, we've been told it's not going to affect us. How many times? And you get to a point where when somebody tells you, oh, don't worry about it.
That's when you need to worry.
Every time you tell me I don't have to worry about it, I turn around and you make a bad decision, and you don't get held accountable for that decision. There's no consequences for you. But there's consequences to everybody else.
Yep.
And it's about balance, right? And we have several, like, for instance, we have a horse club that we're a part of. They do a lot of riding on a piece of property called the Pilchuck Tree Farm, which is close to here.
Yeah, that's right. We deliver up there.
So Pilchuck Tree Farm is a private company that owns the land.
Yep.
But they allow public groups to access and utilize their property. Well, those public groups, you have bicycle groups, you have hiking groups, you have horse groups, you have a lot of different groups that access that property. Well, if you guys don't coexist and get together and have those conversations, they have an organization called the PRA, the Pilchuck Recreation Association, which are representations from each one of these user groups get together on a board of directors, and they talk about that tree farm and the management of it and preserving the ability to access that property, even though it's private property.
Yeah.
Well, the same concepts have to happen in our public lands, where we can't just have one group making decisions for everybody else. We need to get together and have the conversations. And if we're not talking about it, and we're not getting together and presenting our information and our ideas and our goals, right, then we're not doing our public any justice.
Right.
And unfortunately for the hunting community, we are vast, and there's a lot of us, but we're becoming an afterthought, especially in this state. You know, the more the population there is, the percentage of people who are hunters are getting smaller and smaller. So when you talk about what conservation means to us, you can get into several different avenues of it, right? Like when I talk about conservation in the general sense that everybody thinks of automatically, will protect the land and our resources.
Yeah.
But it's so much more than that, right? It's having conversations with individuals in areas where you really don't feel comfortable or want to be in.
It's that extra work that most people don't want to get into.
And it's so important, and it's vital to have representation of our community, right? And having a voice within our local government that makes what is important to us important to the group. And have the conversation, not be an afterthought, right? We know the importance of the monies that is generated to go towards animal biologists and the Fish and Game Department, all these different research programs and everything that they do. We understand the importance of it. But when that starts to get threatened by just don't worry about it. We're just going to
don't worry about it. It'll be fine.
That's great. Well, wait a minute. Are you telling me that there's not room to build any? I don't buy it.
I don't buy it either.
I don't buy
the areas that they're trying to buy, you're not going to put houses on the top of
Meanwhile, you sell property in the United States to other countries. Oh, I call time out.
Well, who's going to be buying this land?
That's just it. Who's going to control the land? It's public land for a reason.
Right?
Or how much are they going to sell? Well, you know, they can promise everything, and they can give you the smoke and mirrors, but we all know the truth in our politics today. What you say is not what you do.
Yeah.
And the public is tired of it. The public wants you to say what you're going to do, and they want to see you do that.
Do you think it has any correlation to slowly just like, I don't know how to frame this out, but like let's say you got a bucket of Legos, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're just taking a little bit here and there until there's nothing left for you to have.
Sure.
So are they doing that, do you think, because they want more control of, let's say, guns?
Yeah, I mean,
stuff like that. Kind of like what California's slowly done. They've slowly pushed to where now they have full control of everything.
When you're told not to ask questions, you should ask.
They should ask questions.
That's when you need to ask questions.
Why is it culturally acceptable to not be transparent? Why are we not being transparent on everything that should absolutely be transparent?
So they have
public lands. There should be transparency to what we're doing, why we're doing it. And, you know, I'm okay with making a decision and moving forward. But the problem is when to reverse some of those decisions takes an act of God to try to get done. So you got to be careful with what decision you make to begin with.
Well, once you sell that public land, you're never getting it back.
No.
Not ever.
We're not creating more land.
Nope.
And okay, well, why are you populating? It doesn't make sense. It's like, okay, well, you want to just make it a thing where nobody goes up in the woods. Okay, great. Well, everything that happens up in those woods affects everything that happens down here.
Yep.
Right? If you're not connected to it, and if you're not planning that, you're not managing it. Yeah, to just say, we're just going to sell it off. Why? Because you mismanaged your business to begin with?
Yeah.
I feel like they're just slowly trying to take away from us until like we get less people that just gives up fighting them.
That's not their main goal. I think it's a byproduct of their decisions. Like, their excuse of why they're increasing our hunting and fishing licenses 38%. Well, it's to go to operating costs. Okay, but what you didn't tell me is why the increase in operating costs is so detrimental to what you're doing. What are you doing with the money that you're getting already?
Not asking enough whys.
We're not asking enough whys. And we're not getting to the root cause of, are you being efficient? Why is it in our society we are so against
asking these questions?
Efficiency.
So is it possible that you think that if we just were able to get more people to fall in love with the outdoors, that those people will turn into conservation?
I think it plays a big part. It plays a part in when you're passionate about something, you care about it, and you're more willing to ask questions that others aren't. When you have something that is so important to you as hunting and being connected to the outdoors, when you know that can be taken away from somebody who doesn't give it any thought, then that's kind of tough. That's a tough pill to swallow, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not creating enough buzz and enough attention to that passion, and that passion's defined differently in each individual, of course, but it's passion nonetheless.
Yep.
And you don't just have to be passionate about hunting in order to still advocate for hunters. I know a lot of people who are passionate about what I'm passionate about just because of their connection with me.
Right.
They might not want to go out in the woods. They might not want to hunt. That's okay. But they understand that it's important to me, and they know me. They understand why it's important to me, right? They understand the connection because, one, I'm willing to have the conversation with them. And for two, they're open to having a conversation. They're not willing to just shut it off because we have differences of opinion, or we think differently, or we are on one side of the aisle or the other side of the aisle, right? There's so much happening in our society right now where everybody wants to be on a separate side. It's like, you're not on a separate side. You're on the same side. You just think of it a different way, right? I hunt ducks. You guys hunt big game, but we're hunters.
We're hunters.
We have the same interests. Do I hunt ducks up in the mountains? No. Do you hunt elk down in the salt marsh down in Stanwood? No. But we're connected.
Yep.
We have to find common ground, common interest, and we have to coexist. Right? We have to coexist to people that live in the concrete jungle.
I see a lot of that kind of like for rifle and archery. Mm-hmm. You seem like they're against each other.
They're always headbutting.
Yes and no. I mean,
but we're all the same people.
Think of, in my opinion, archers are what's the word I'm looking for? Originalists, purists, because that's where that was our first tool.
Right.
That was our first.
It's like fly fishing. It's like fly fishing versus your spinning rod.
Yeah, I mean,
it's more of an art.
The bow. Go back in history and talk about the first archery people that were creating bows and everything. I was like, man, what an advantage. You got your hands, you pick up a rock, you could throw a rock at that animal, but man, you take a stick and some twine and you put it together and like, oh man.
You get some distance.
I mean, technologically massive, right? Doesn't mean that there isn't the same amount of stuff associated with it. There are people that do multiple different disciplines. And there's some that just say, I will only hunt with a bow.
Yep.
Or I will only hunt modern firearm. Or I will only hunt black powder or whatever it is. Right? And you got to find what element gives you that feeling of
being out,
being
nature,
connected, and what floats your boat.
You got to find that love for why you're out there.
Well, there's even hikers that just go out and hike, and that's their
land too.
That's right? How they connect.
Now, in the dog training world, we have massive amount of individuals that own the hunting breed dogs, that go to training days, that go to these hunt test organizations, but they don't go out in the woods and hunt. They don't hunt birds at all. But they love the dog work. They love the breed and what the dog is intended for. So you don't have to go out and hunt necessarily to be involved.
That's right? The same way with archery. There's some people who only shoot targets.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah.
That's what they love.
It's in the Olympics. You don't see a deer or an elk walking.
But they might not realize that, we're losing public land and stuff. And maybe next thing you know, they start putting restrictions on bows because why do we need them if we don't have animals to hunt? It might affect them 20 years from now.
It'll affect everybody eventually.
You go back to, it brings me up to the Pittman-Robertson Act of 1937.
Yep.
Where basically it was an excise tax that was taken out of our funds in order to give back to conservation, right? Well, archery equipment was added in 1972. So portions of the sales go towards conservation. It goes towards preserving that. Well, if you're just going down to the bow range and you're just shooting indoors and you're shooting at targets, okay, well, every time you buy a bow and arrow,
it's still going into
it's still going towards conservation. You're still a vital part of that conversation.
Right.
People who open up a ballot, regardless if you bought a bow or if you went out in the woods and you've hunted a day in your life, you're still part of that conversation. It's still important because there's connections between some of the things that you like that you might not have even followed the path to realize that they were connected in one way or another.
Right. Yep.
So coexisting is a massive part in the conversation of conservation.
Yeah.
It's not just only the users have to pay attention to it, right? Hunters are a massive part of conservation dollars, but they're not the only part of conservation dollars. Matter of fact, you look at the percentages of hunters versus the percentage of our population, they're a small number.
Very small.
Yeah.
And look at the impact that they have on it. They have a massive impact on it, right? So in a community that I'm not a part of, if I don't understand and recognize the impact that they have on things around me, then that's kind of foolish. Right?
That's why you kind of got to have buddies of all different types.
Yeah, you have
know.
I mean,
so you can connect.
We live in a smorgasbord of an environment.
Yeah.
You will gravitate towards people with like interests, but understanding that not everybody does what you do, but they're not outside of you. I mean, yeah, we all have difference of opinion, right? When it becomes controversial and when it becomes
ego battled.
Yeah, when they make it weird, it's like, okay, well, that's not the point.
Right.
The point is, you know what? I'm okay with you liking what you like. You should be okay with me liking what I like.
Right. It's how it should be.
If there's conflict, then we should utilize our society and our systems in order to get resolution.
Yeah, that's when we talk about it.
And then once that conversation stops, there is no more talking. Right? Mm-hmm. Then it becomes a different conversation. And I think in our society right now, everything jumps to the picking one side or the other. There's no coexisting.
Right.
It's like, well, wait a minute. When you go out in that woods, you step 1 foot in that woods and leave your bow and leave your weapon, leave everything alone. When you're out there, if you don't coexist in those woods, those woods are gonna
be gone.
They're gonna get you, right? So you learn how to adapt and you learn how to be with what's there, right? It's no different than being downtown Seattle. You have to coexist. You have to survive and navigate, right? We're talking about passions. We're talking about extracurricular activities. We're talking about living, right? And the things we choose to do. If we don't preserve that, and we don't preserve other things, and we don't come together and have those conversations, I think we lose. And we're talking about trying to stimulate interest in what we do. We have to look at it culturally, right?
That's where it all falls back on.
It does fall down to, well, how come you got into fishing and hunting? Well, I got into fishing because my dad fished.
Right.
I didn't hunt, but friends of mine hunted and family members hunt. And then you start realizing, well, gosh, okay, well, yeah, I'd like to try that sometime.
It's all
intertwined. Like, oh my goodness. Now that I've done it.
Love it.
Right?
I wish I would have started a lot sooner.
But you started.
Yep.
And
you have a big time passion for it now.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And you're passing that on. I've seen several of your videos posted on Facebook of you and your son just driving around scouting.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Those are fun times.
When he looks back, he's going to remember driving those Forest Service roads.
That's exactly how I was when I was young.
Right? I remember getting out in the woods and camping and fishing and doing all sorts of stuff. I mean, it kind of led me to here, but those memories are what stick out.
And that's what we need to push.
That's what we need to focus on. That's how we accomplish everything that we want to accomplish to preserve what we love.
Do you think we're too late?
No, not at all. It's never too late.
Okay.
Right? Our efforts might need to be heightened a little. We might need to
really start pushing.
Stop being so
polite.
Yeah. You have to be willing to offend somebody in order to get progress. Doesn't mean that you need to be mean. Doesn't mean that you need to be right.
Well, sometimes the truth hurts.
Sometimes it does. But if you don't say it out loud, who does it benefit? Nobody.
Yeah.
If you just keep it to yourself and you're just mad about it and you won't come to the table and have a conversation, if there's no compromise, if there's no understanding from one group to the next, right? Some people are, oh, how could you kill an animal? Have you had dinner lately?
I've had this happen before.
Yeah, I have too.
You deer hunt?
Now I've also on the flip side, I've been out on public land, come right out of the marsh with my waders and my shotgun in my hand, backpack on full of decoys, walked up on some bird photographers and had 30-minute conversations with them on all those species of birds that are out there.
I think a lot of people don't realize how much we actually love the animals.
And have in common with those who don't hunt.
Yeah.
It's like...
They don't understand. They're like, how could you kill an animal, but then also say you love it?
How could you eat an animal that goes through being in captivity its whole life and going through a slaughterhouse?
Right. There's a big disconnect between those two things.
There's a disconnect. And you cannot describe what it's like to take an animal's life to somebody who's never taken an animal's life.
Right. But they can go down to McDonald's and eat a burger down there just fine because they didn't see the cow die.
And, or to protest an oil company on a plastic kayak.
Right.
And not make the connection. It's like, I mean, I understand your argument, but if you're not seeing what you're doing, it's like, hey, you know what? Save the trees right after you're done building my house.
Right.
Who does that serve? Right? And unfortunately, that's our mentality today because we're not willing to have those conversations. We're not willing to talk about the stuff nobody wants to talk about. Right? All of our podcasts, I mean, yeah, they want to give us all the good stuff. But what about
good stuff is good.
Good stuff is great. It's what drives the
cherry
industry.
Picking the good stuff, though.
It's cherry picking. But how does it all connect into what we do? If you have that quiet time when the cameras are turned off, what are you thinking about?
Okay.
When they stop watching this, when everybody stops watching this video, what are they thinking about? What content from this video are they going to take away from them and say, maybe I should pay attention to that?
Well, hopefully they'll realize how important even the things that you guys love. Hopefully you realize how much you guys need to fight for those things too, because
it all pays apart.
Yeah.
I mean, like right now, my wife and daughter are up in Darrington at a horse show. You know, they're doing their passion.
Right.
And they know that I'm taking time out of my day to do something that's passionate to me. I'm passionate about a lot of different things. Right? Maybe not as much as others, but I've been around to listen to those conversations.
But if you hear somebody else that's passionate about a certain topic, you're gonna be
like, hey, what? How did you get that feeling? And maybe it's something I should look into, right? And then when you start doing it, you're like, oh man, I found something new. You have to be willing to be uncomfortable in order to find something that's like, oh man, I'm so glad that I made the decision to go out and put that bolt action 10 gauge to my shoulder and destroy it.
You never know until you know.
Right? Yeah. You never know that, man, maybe I should have thought twice before. But I did. And you know, that memory of how I got started. And some would well, I don't want anything to do with that. Man, the pain of it. But me, I was just like, there was that adrenaline. There was like, wow. And then I started thinking, well, maybe that's too big a gun for me. Maybe I'll go with the 12 gauge. Yeah, but you
maybe go with the 20 gauge.
Yeah, and then once you get into certain species of hunting, and once you have access to, you know, life takes over. You have a job. You have family. You start doing stuff, and then you go, how does all this stuff fit in? I mean, if I'm scouting and I'm up in the woods for 5-6 weeks in the year, how do I fit that into a busy lifestyle? And again, we're taking something that used to be a lifestyle, now it's a hobby, and we're passionate in a lot of different things.
Right.
I do so many different things. You know, you go quad and you're fishing, you're horseback riding, you're hunting, you're doing. How do you fit it all in? It's like it's impossible. And then you're raising children. Oh.
Yeah,
add a kid into the mix, and okay, well now you start going, well, I kind of want to expose them to a lot of those things.
Yeah,
and then you're at Little League, and you're at softball, and you're at, you know what I mean. And before you know it, you're looking at your calendar, and your calendar's full all year long. You're like, oh my, I got to remember that hunting season is coming up. And
I feel like you're running through my life right now.
Because that's what we go through.
Right.
And then, you know, like with me, I played sports young. lots of injuries and everything else, hunted a lot. Now life is slowing down. It's hard. It's hard to get up in those woods and hike, and it's hard to get out there. I still have it up here. Physically, my body's shut down. So I got to kind of pick and choose what I like to do.
Battles.
You pick and choose your battles. Would I love to be able to just go out there and walk 15 miles up the mountain? Sure. Is it going to happen? No, not at all.
That's what you got the quad for.
That's what I got the quad for. You work smarter, not harder. But, you look at things a little bit differently, and when you're raising children like my daughter, I'm kind of passing that on now. And she's getting to the age right now where she's going to start shooting. I'm thinking about getting her a bow.
And you get to see all those things that you're showing her that you
just start giving back.
And then it restarts again.
Right?
Then you get her growing up, loving it.
Right?
Yeah, all my kids right now are starting to get into hunting and stuff. And I just watching them go through like the same maybe memories that I have when I was younger is a different type of feeling. Right.
You don't know what is going to stick with them. Our philosophy with our daughter is we just want her to get exposed to stuff. We don't care what you're doing, but you're going to do something.
Yeah.
I don't want to play softball. Okay, don't play softball, but you're going to play something. Well, I guess I'll play softball. Okay.
And then she loves it.
I mean, obviously I'm a baseball guy. That was my sport. But if she chose to go do something else, I want her to do something with the same intensity and the same passion. And the same commitment.
Yep.
And I don't want it to not be fun. But yeah, I remember back when I was playing, it was always fun, but then you get into competition and you get into, how do I improve? How do I do things? Same thing, those skill sets lead into hunting. Okay, I'm out here and I'm out in public and I don't have any camo. I got this shotgun that shoots every other time. And
it's my 5th year in a row with no animal.
You see guys come into the field and man, they got the boats, they got the waders, they got all the gear, they got everything, and you're thinking, gosh, I don't make enough money to buy any of that stuff, but how do I? And then all of a sudden you figure it out. And then all of a sudden you turn 52 like I am and go, man, I walk into Cabela's now and I go, nothing I need.
Yeah.
Right? But at first I went into Cabela's and was like, oh, man,
I need it all.
Wish. I mean, I had 10,000 wish lists. But then you figure it out. And then you look back going, oh, man, I remember when I first started out.
I still have 10,000 wish lists.
Everybody does. But I look at it going, but I don't need it. I don't do, and it's not something that I'm like, I'm missing out because I don't have that.
In the grand scheme of things, nothing really matters except for the memories.
Exactly.
That's the most important part of all of it.
Yeah. And that's how you conserve what we're talking about. That's how you make sure that future generations are going to put as much importance into what we're talking about as we do. Regardless of how they do it, they don't have to do it exactly like us.
Right.
But they have to be passionate about something in order to at least have the conversation. And, we have to kind of accept the fact that, hunting is becoming less and less, but there's going to be a time in our society where hunting might, if you don't have those skills, you might be left out.
Yeah.
Right. And our situation could change and being prepared in just life skills, period, is huge. I look at hunter's education. I wasn't around a weapon until I was 13 or 14, but didn't mean that I didn't respect it.
Yeah.
And didn't understand it.
Right.
But I just wasn't exposed to it. But I still had that mentality, even when I went through the military and everything else. I knew how to operate a weapon. I knew what the bad end of it was. And, you have those concepts because of values that were taught and brought down in anything that we did, and just experiences. But like with my daughter, her exposure to everything. I mean, if she sees a gun, she's not weirded out by it. It's not a mystery. It's not, right?
She's been taught.
Yeah, she's been conditioned. Not just taught, right? She's been conditioned, and there's an understanding there. There's a responsibility for us to give back to future generations. There's a responsibility, like when I say, everybody that's gained this information, what are you going to do when you take it with you? What do you do?
Right.
I mean, now we have the age of everything is recorded and it's documented, but ultimately when you're gone, you're gone. What's your legacy?
Right.
What are you leaving behind?
Yeah.
And, to some, it's only important what they leave behind to their own family. And to others, it's what's important that they leave to the world. and you kind of you go through life, you figure out where you kind of fit in that. I mean, obviously I'm not a celebrity, but I've been exposed to celebrities, and I've had interactions with them, and through my experiences and through different organizations that I've been a part of, and meeting certain people, and you realize it's like, yeah, you might do things that put you on the map, but yet deep down inside, you get up and put your pants on the same way I do every day. And I early on in my life stopped making celebrity important, and it didn't matter to me. It's like, yeah, you're doing great things and it's cool, but it didn't bother me. I didn't get weird about it, right? I didn't fangirl on everything because I realized that there's more to that lesson than anything else. I started looking at what these celebrities and what these professionals, especially in sports or athletes or archery, anything that you're doing, your idols. You start looking at what they're doing and how they're doing it. And you start breaking down things other than just the illusion that there's some super, you take the fan away. Then what are you left with? You're left with all the little things. That's what's important. That's what makes the difference in anything that you're doing. Even like when you first get into archery and you're shooting at the target, you're going, man, I'm putting in the time. How come I'm not getting better? And then you start paying attention to, these little adjustments are made. And all of a sudden you start refining it. You start getting tighter groups. You start doing things because you started paying attention to things that weren't right in your face.
You're building your passion.
You're building your passion, and you're building your skill set. You're taking information and going, wait a minute, and making small adjustments and reaping the rewards of those. Professionals that do this stuff constantly have to put in that work, right? It didn't just come overnight. Now there's talent, obviously. Mm-hmm. You can't duplicate talent. You either have it or you don't. But you can take somebody who might be mediocre, make them good.
Right.
Are you going to be great? The percentages of people that are at the great level are few and far between. But you look at what's the difference between the people that are just good and the people that are great?
Effort.
Those differences are not a lot.
Right.
They're very small. And then you look at, okay, well, what things do I want to do where do I want to be? What are my goals?
Right.
Right. And some people set goals so high and they just constantly grind to achieve them. Great. And some people are just okay with just being this guy.
At the end of the day, it's about the memories.
It is about
getting
memories.
out there, getting into the woods,
right, and
enjoying what we got.
Having conversations, being able to sit on a couch and talk for an hour and just BS. Yep. That is super valuable. We call it, the campfire talks. When you're sitting around a campfire, just reminiscing and talking. When you get around some of the old timers that were hunting with equipment that we don't have. That we couldn't even imagine. Our
those stories are so much fun to listen to.
Oh my gosh, it's like you see some of those old relics, and you're like, how did you even?
My grandpa used to have bows hanging up in his house, and I'd look at him and go, "Oh my god, that thing! You could actually shoot that thing."
No, I went out,
yeah, possibly.
I shoot better than you did.
At first, I've got a Mossberg 835, and I'm hunting next to people that have thousands of dollars into their shotguns. And I'm dusting birds where they're not hitting anything.
Yeah.
And I'm like...
Equipment's not everything.
It's not everything. It was at first. That was my... if I just had a better shotgun, I'd be a better shot. And then I realized...
I think a lot of people think that.
Yeah,
they do.
And you know what? You can go out with the top-of-the-line bow and be a horrible shot.
Yep.
And then you could take somebody who's an awesome shot that can take some
1990s bow.
Yeah, they can go to Walmart and pick one off the shelf and refine it right down into... It's because their technique and what their connection to it.
It's because of that passion.
The passion, the work that they put in, the concepts, the little things that is the missing link, right? And our ability to mentor other people and even spark those passions, right? And if you wait for somebody to try to become passionate themselves in today's day and age, it's
not going to happen.
Yeah, it won't happen.
It won't happen.
Especially when there's such a shadowing on our industry of, guns are not good,
right.
Killing animals that's not nice.
Become a vegan.
Yeah, all those different things that are pushed that, you shouldn't be doing. It's really hard for people to build a passion on something that everybody says don't do that.
And with passion, it just depends on what you're passionate about. And artificial passion is, I think, a detriment to our society right now. Natural passion is passed down, and it's
ingrained into you.
You know, it's conditioned. You're conditioning your children and other groups. It's like, I don't care what you're passionate about, but be passionate about something.
Yep.
Something, yeah.
Put something. I mean, you start asking early. You know, back in the day, what do you want to be when you grow up? Oh, I want to be. But it's until you're 25 or 30.
Then
like,
you find it.
What do I want to be?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to have a job, make money. Okay, great. And for me, it was like, I just want to make more money than I'm making now.
Yeah.
And then I just want to, and then when you get to my age, you're like, you're making money. You're like, great. Okay. Well, what was it? Man, 30 years already.
What was all that for?
29 years married, 34 years together. And I'm like, 34. Wow. That's a long time.
That is a long time.
Like, my goodness. And then, you know, you wake up, your knees hurt, your shoulders hurt, everything hurts. And you're like, you just keep going.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, I'm not going to change it for the world, because so much that I've learned over the years, anytime that I have a chance to have the conversations with people, I just give it back. And then all of a sudden you just sit back and watch, and you're like, okay, then they find their passion, or they at least are encouraged to go find what they're passionate about. And then when you see them do it, you're like, okay, cool.
Yeah, that's how I'm trying to raise my boy.
You can't force it.
No, you want to go out with me? And he's like, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we go out, we have a good day. And then now whenever I'll send a video to my wife, I'll see a deer or something. And then my boy will be like, did you shoot it?
Did you shoot it? Oh, no, not the season yet.
It's not season.
And he might go from like 6 years old until like 15, and all that might like, he might not think about that, but then when he turns 16, it might just click and all those memories come back.
Yeah.
And he goes, I really want to start doing that again.
Yeah.
And it's just being out in the woods. Hey, I'm going to go scouting. Hey, do you want to go?
I mean, that happened to me all through high school. I kind of forgot all about hunting and fishing. Mm-hmm. And then I started having kids, and I out of nowhere, it just clicked. I was like, I used to really like shooting a bow.
Life happens, and you get busy.
Yep.
And then you have kids, and then you're like, oh man, by the time you look back, you're like, man, I haven't really hunted in like 5 years. I still have it up here. I mean,
yeah, those like, memories start running through.
Just like right yesterday. I mean, if I grabbed my shotgun and went out in the duck, I mean, I could grab my duck calls and everything else and be like, it just never left. But you're like, man, it's been 4 years since I really, because, you know, you focus on work, you focus on what's important.
Yep.
And, you know, when you get opportunities to talk about it, I'm sure, like growing up, me and Kenny weren't that close. But when you realize, oh, I didn't realize Uncle Derek had that much hunting, you know, until you start asking the questions, and you're like, oh, there's something there. It's like, I don't think about it because I don't really talk about it, you know, but when you have an opportunity to talk about it, definitely take it.
Yeah.
You know, and when you get out in the woods and when you give back and you're passionate about something and you connect it, if you're connecting everything that we do to everything that's going on in the world, because some people think, well, it doesn't matter with how many people are coming into this country. Well, no, it kind of does.
Uh-huh.
Because the trickle-down effect, the ripple effect of that affects everything that we do and we're passionate about. So when you talk about the selling off public lands to build housing, it's like, well, wait a minute, what about the lands that we already have? What about, I mean, how many spaces in between buildings do you see downtown where it's like, well, there's plenty of places to build housing.
Right.
Yeah.
What kind of housing are you talking about?
They can't make as much money selling those, though.
What kind of housing you're talking about? Multi-unit housing that are only owned by these corporations that don't want the individual to own land, don't want you to be able to you know, self-sustain.
Yeah, probably
yourself.
mostly apartment complexes.
Of course, because there's revenue there.
And then you can't have a garden at your house. Right? You can't pass down.
Their passion is, how can I make more money?
Yeah, their passion is to.
Ours is, how do we protect this land?
How do we save this
Put
land
everybody into a box while I live on a mansion with thousands of acres for me to roam.
Yeah.
While I make everybody else pay for it. It's like,
I think the human is meant to be in the woods.
We're meant to be connected to
mentally woods, you know,
right? And have access to those things and understand the importance.
All of it.
Sure. Understand the importance of what it means to go out on a trail. And then you look at, okay, well, who's caring for this land? You go up on the trails and you see garbage thrown everywhere. You see people that just don't care. You're like, well, wait a minute. Do you understand the connection between that and what we're trying to preserve?
Right.
And then you get into the argument, well, let's just keep everybody out of the woods. It's like, that's not solving any problems. You're not going to get anybody to care about the woods unless they get out in the woods and they actually spend time and benefit from that.
Yeah, the people who are throwing garbage, they're just going out there the first time probably, and they're like, oh, I'll just throw this out
No,
here.
it's just they don't have that care.
They don't have the care, and it's not their problem.
Right.
Well, eventually it's going to be your problem. Because eventually...
Because you're not going to be able to go back to that same spot.
It'll be sold.
You know, and so our money's generated from hunting and fishing and doing the things that we love. They're important. And our voices are getting smaller and smaller. So we got to use avenues like podcasts and like things that we're passionate about in order to generate enough buzz to get things done.
We got to make our voice louder.
Yeah.
Well, Derek, I think this was a pretty good podcast.
I hope so.
I think so. I think it turned out great.
I can talk for 3 more hours if you want.
I don't even know how long we went.
Well, I do appreciate your time.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, thanks for showing up.
Thank you.
We thank you guys for sticking around and listening. And if you guys have a passion out there, you guys should probably protect it for sure. Yeah. So, and if you got kids, take them fishing and hunting.
I think so.
All right.
Right on. Thank you.
There, guys.
Next time.